The enemy is an impersonal, implacable, inescapable demographic earthquake. It does not care about who we hate, who we oppose, or what we believe. It will consume us all. Gamergate wasn't a hate movement. It wasn't a movement to harass minorities and women out of geek and gamer spaces, or female games developers. But it also wasn't a consumer revolt against ethical breaches in journalism. What Gamergate actually was this. And now a word from our sponsor. Just kidding. HoneyBadgerRadio is far too radical to attract sponsorship. And to be frank, I don't think I could try to convince people to invest in something I wasn't very passionate about myself. I'm going to ask you to consider investing in this channel, in HoneyBadgerRadio. Men's issues are extremely painful to think about, much less talk about. And they're painful because they invite us to question fundamental aspects of who we think we are. For men, it's an identity of ultimate strength. For women, it's the false and empty empowerment of victimhood. And if you're listening to me now, you're the kind of person who has the strength to carry that burden. You have the bloody-mindedness to look where people tell you not to, and you have the grit to power through the pain. And take it a step further. Invest in bringing awareness to men's issues. Invest in bringing awareness to the fact that men's issues are a solution not just for men, but for women and the greater society. Recognizing men's issues makes us stronger, more self-aware men and women. It makes us ready to take the helm of human history rather than trailing in its wake. Recognizing men's issues makes us better people. Investing in them makes us unbeatable. In the last month and a half, if you've been following my story, I have received some pretty devastating news in regards to my lawsuit against the Calgary Expo and the Mary Sue. August 1st, the judge delivered his judgment, and I lost on all causes of action. The process of that defeat, or experiencing that defeat, was pretty intense. I went through a good month of depression and anxiety and questioning myself and everything that I was doing. It's a real blow to my sense of self, because I've always seen myself as somebody who could fight back. And fight back not just for myself, but for others. And of course, it's not over yet. There's still round 2 to go. There's still an appeal to go. But still, an appeal means more time, more effort. It means another possibility that we won't be able to overturn this precedent that Canadian companies, corporations can ignore the consumer rights of Canadians if the media doesn't like us. But at the same time, when you go through something like that, when you have to face your own failure and your own inability to live up to who you think you are, you lose a lot of baggage, because it gives you a new perspective on what's going on in the greater world. And this perspective that it gave me was that the forces at play, the forces that I'm opposed to, are a lot more impersonal than I had ever imagined. Before all of this, I thought that my enemy was clear. It's feminism, it's women worsting, it's the deification of female victimhood. That was my enemy, as represented by groups and ideologies that push it. And I realized after having gone through that experience that no, my enemy, if you can call it an enemy, is far more vast and impersonal. Now, getting back to the meat of the matter, I am a bit of a squirrel when it comes to thinking, so it's difficult for me to just off the cuff explain a really complex concept. So I shall be going into a different form to explain what I'm talking about. To begin the story of these impersonal forces at play, I'm going to begin by telling a story of my company lawyer, Rowan, and an experience that he had had. Rowan is not just a lawyer because he's in Saskatchewan, he's also a farmer, and his father's a farmer. And a few years back, Rowan discovered this revolutionary new legume crop, researching it on the internet. And he had brought it up with his father. But despite all of the amazing qualities that it had, his father just seemed to be completely disinterested in it. Didn't really engage him, or it didn't engage him at all. And Rowan was quite frustrated by that experience because he was understandably very excited about it. Revolutionary new legume crop, it's a farmer thing. Then a year later, Rowan's dad watched a report on the TV about this revolutionary new legume crop, and he couldn't stop talking about it. And observing all of this, Rowan said to me, it's like, for that generation, it's like it doesn't exist until it's on the TV. And listening to that, it really stuck in my mind like a thorn. It doesn't exist until it's on the TV. McLuhan, the man who predicted the internet 30 years before it appeared, once said, "The medium is the message." The medium through which we encounter the greater world defines our habits of thinking. For an entire generation, things just don't exist unless they're on the TV. Or it doesn't exist until it's reported on by a newspaper. TV and traditional media in general is part of a continuous media evolution from the emperor's balcony to the pulpit to the radio to the television. All of these forms of content delivery have one thing in common. They are a talking head or an authoritative voice delivering us the truth about the world. Throughout history, institutions of authority have arisen simply because of people's fear of uncertainty. They give those institutions power because those institutions enforced certainty and removed uncertainty about things we don't know or couldn't know. We want a ready answer to the problems and the mysteries of the world. And we gravitate towards authorities who will confirm to us that our beliefs are exactly right. The world has problems because not enough people believe as I do. We invest in authority to remove uncertainty. Uncertainty in the world around us, uncertainty in our identity, our self-worth, uncertainty about the future. Remember this idea. The pain of uncertainty gives authority its power. Without our fear of uncertainty, authority loses its authority. If we have an answer to the problems of the world, we don't have to fear them, right? I'm going to throw some graphs and charts at you now. This is a chart illustrating births per year from 1909 to 2009. The age range of the baby boomer generation is less disputed than any other generation simply because the change in birth rate is so stark. It starts in 1946 and ends in 1964. This graph indicates the adoption of TV by the consumer marketplace. Between 1956 to 57, TV had reached 75% of all households. That means by the time the leading edge of baby boomers was 10 to 11 years old, either their household or their friend's household had a TV. That age range corresponds to andriarchy, a period of hormonal growth that prepares a child for puberty, both physically and mentally. During this maturation process, a child will develop the foundation for a fully adult theory of mind. When the first half of the baby boomers were defining themselves as individuals in relation to others, they were exposed to the rapid adoption of a new mass media technology. Although that adoption was not truly disruptive technology, but the adoption of one that flowed naturally from radio. This range of birth dates, 1946 to 56, establishes a generational segment that invests not just a sense of authority in TV, but a sense of newness. That generation experienced its technological triumphs and moral milestones through TV, but also experience TV itself as innovative. The adoption of TV influenced their psychological development from child to young adult, and thus shaped aspects of their adult identity in ways the trailing edge of baby boomers would not experience. The second half of baby boomers never knew life without TV. Interestingly, the baby boomers are split politically, with the leading half being liberal and the trailing half being more conservative. Now let's get in our time warp and fast forward 30 years to the mid-80s. After the video game crash of 1983, the US market for console games tanked, leaving the marketplace ripe for takeover by PC gaming and Japanese console makers. This recovery resumed the widespread adoption of games as an entertainment medium, with game consoles reaching 75% of all homes in the mid-90s. Relative to the smooth and continuous advancement represented by the pulpit to the radio to the television, games are a disruptive mass media technology. In a game, your progress is uncertain. It depends on developing a skill to the point where you can advance. Advance may be rewarded by a point, by another cutscene, by an unlocked area, but the essential nature of a game is to present an uncertain outcome and give you the tools to overcome it with effort. Games are monetized uncertainty. They make uncertainty fun. This is a vastly different landscape than other mass media of the day. Uncertainty may exist within a story, but it's not resolved by the actions of the listener, viewer, or reader. They passively receive the solution to the uncertainty from an authoritative source, the scriptwriter, the news anchor, the politician. In that sense, games condition gamers to regard uncertainties as starting points for fun, but also as something under the control of the individual's choices and actions. You take an action to resolve an uncertainty in a game. You don't wait for an authority to resolve it for you. The causal arrow could be reversed. Perhaps games simply select those people who enjoy resolving uncertainties through their own efforts. Here's another set of birth dates you might want to remember. As the leading edge of the baby boomers experienced the widespread adoption of TV, another generation experienced the widespread adoption of games through its formative development towards adulthood. This generational segment runs from about 1973 to 1982. Now, the fact is this generational segment is small, and gamers represent an even smaller subset of this small cohort. But this group is a snowball rolling down the mountain, gathering size and speed as it goes. And it gets even more interesting from there, because there's a third generational segment running from 1982 to 1992 that experienced the widespread adoption of the internet during its formative development. In the internet age, when you have a question about reality, what do? You go to Google, or if you want actual reality, DuckDuckGo, and you enter a question. You express your uncertainty. Then you are presented with a number of possible answers. Uncertainty, questions, become the starting point to uncovering truths through your own analysis and research. Authority no longer gatekeeps knowledge. Questions themselves are the gatekeeper. And your own initiative to dig deeper is the keymaster. Bit by bit, we condition ourselves to regard uncertainty not as fearful, but the first step to uncovering truth through our own efforts. We no longer passively receive the truth from an authority, we actively find it. And a generation is trained to regard uncertainty not as frightening, but as a transitional state on the path to understanding. Once again, authority requires a fear of uncertainty in order to maintain its power, because we invest in authority in order to avoid the fear. However, for larger and larger groups of people, the fear of uncertainty is disappearing. So let's look again at 2014 in demographic terms, the year of Gamergate, the year that gamers were declared dead by the mainstream media and were reborn outside of its influence. What stands out? The generation that experienced the widespread adoption of games as a medium, the generation that enjoys uncertainty as a pastime, has reached its prime adulthood. The generation that experienced the widespread adoption of the internet as a medium, the generation that regards uncertainty as the first step to knowledge, has reached its teens and early adulthood, and the leading edge of the boomers, the last generation raised with centralized mass media as an authority, are retiring from public life. In 10 years, the leading edge of liberal baby boomers won't just be retiring, they will be starting to die off. 2024. And their conservative younger brothers and sisters will start to retire as well. 2024. As the baby boomers pass, games and search engines will replace TV and newspapers as the dominant media for both entertainment, socialization, and truth. Gamergate is a tremor heralding this demographic shift. The changes we'll be facing will start to accelerate in 2024. They'll likely peak in 2031, when most of the leading edge of baby boomers are dead and the rest are retired. And they'll mostly be concluded by 2041, when the trailing edge goes the way of the leading. I'm going to take a step back here because this fight between traditional media and new media has a larger context. That greater context is maintaining a functional society. In that greater context, traditional media's behavior becomes a necessary evil. The reality created by mass media moral authority is a noble lie. For all of its many problems, authoritarianism maintains a shared moral landscape. I said near the beginning of this, when you experience a crushing failure, it allows you to step out of your own ego for a bit and see the world in less personal terms. We like to blame the problems we're seeing around us on our enemies, and those enemies often resemble what we hate most about ourselves. I was wrong about who the enemy is. It isn't feminism. It isn't social justice warrior. It isn't even the left. It isn't the alt-right or traditionalists. It isn't any identifiable group or ideology or person. In fact, it really shouldn't be called the enemy. The enemy is an impersonal, implacable, inescapable demographic earthquake. It does not care about who we hate, who we oppose, or what we believe. It will consume us all. It's extremely satisfying to watch the T-Rex eat the smarmy lawyer. And certainly what's coming will eat the media and likely all authority that relies on fear of uncertainty to sustain its power and relevance. But as a species, we have never faced a future without investing in authority to give us a shared morality, a shared reality, a shared goal, a shared identity. Now we do face that future. Religion, ideology, political movements, they all at the very least get us working together to create a mutually beneficial society, a society we all rely on for our very existence. The leftists may be trying to co-opt games as a medium to keep alive moral authoritarianism, but they have a point. We have never created a successful society without it. The halcyon days of Western society came about under TV's benevolent flicker, invisibly training us to work together towards goals that we all agreed were good. We were all raised with Cosby giving us fatherly advice, Sagan telling us the secrets of the universe, and the media shining light on what was immoral. TV put everyone on the same page. It gave us a collective mythology and a shared archetype of fatherly wisdom, motherly forbearance, spiritual mentorship. It gave us a window to a greater world. It was sharing all of this through the medium of television that made us one people. The medium is the message, and the message of centralized mass media is social unity. And in 23 years, all of that will be functionally gone. It's easy to blame boomers and laugh at them for being rubes who get their morality from a box on an altar, but the truth is, without authority to inspire the habits and beliefs that a society needs to function, what's going to replace it? So what happens when the training wheels come off? When we no longer have our mechanical pulpit to keep things together? The demographic earthquake that's coming lays everyone low. Media, government, corporations, and yes, talking heads on YouTube. The emergence of counterculture authority on YouTube is the intersection between the fading investment in talking heads as a source of truth and the rise of the search bar as a tool of truth-seeking. But ultimately, this is a transitional state. The conditions that made YouTube talking heads possible will disappear as we move inexorably towards a future without the authorities of the past. Do we have the tools to manage the fallout of this demographic earthquake? How do you create consensus, shared habits, agreement, without appealing to authority. We live in a wickedly complex system of reciprocal altruism based on trusting one another. This trust is generated through a sense of belonging to something greater, a greater story told by our moral authorities. We need to know how these vast systems of reciprocal altruism form. What's their life cycle? What's their anatomy? How do you build one from scratch? Because we're about to be called upon to do just that. We need to be more aware of who we are and what the answer to that question means for our greater society. I don't know the answer to these questions, but I do know one thing. The only people who have a shot at answering these questions are those of us who have the entire data set. Men's issues are half or more of the total data set. Without weighing them with the same importance as women's issues, we have no hope of finding a successful solution. And if we don't find a successful solution to this demographic bomb, the prognosis for our society, our species, is rather grim. Welcome back. This demographic earthquake is our moon landing and world war combined. It's an opportunity not just to fight, but to achieve something no civilization has in human history, to create a civilization of civilizations. We live in complex systems of reciprocal altruism, otherwise known as civilizations. Civilizations are made possible by how we structure our identities, how we compete, how we cooperate, and what we believe in. Those identities are formed by the dance between men and women, the dynamic between men's gender role and women's. Iron and the alphabet made the social structures of the Bronze Age obsolete. Rome's republic rose by inspiring separate tribes to cooperate for a shared purpose, but fell when the Senate became gridlocked with individual ambition. I don't even know if people have asked about the mechanics of these complex systems of reciprocal altruism and why they keep rising over and over again in human history, and why they experience technological and social revolution until their social technology, their social cohesion falls apart and they disappear to history. If we can take this dynamic and make it fully conscious, there isn't any technological revolution that we can't pair with a social evolution that allows us to realize the full transformative potential of that technology without having it destroy our social cohesion in the process. This isn't a journey outward, it's a journey inward to understand ourselves and lay the foundation for future generations' journey outward to the planets, to the stars, to other galaxies. We will become captains of our own fate, and it starts with you investing in these issues. Deprogramming Women is my series covering the mechanics of individual identity, how it's formed, and how it's manipulated. In addition, I'll be continuing to offer analysis of market and demographic forces, as well as future forecasts in my Unnamed Room series. If you're interested in investing in proactive, constructive, and future-orientated content, consider becoming a patron of HoneyBadgerRadio. You can find per-episode options at www.patreon.com/HoneyBadgerRadio. And if you're interested in one-time or monthly options, please go to www.feedthebadger.com. HoneyBadgerRadio patrons have already enjoyed preview access to this content, as well as the opportunity to give feedback in its creation every step of the way. So thank you to those patrons who helped me make this, and thank you for listening. I hope you found this content enlightening. And please do join me next time when I cover your questions. So if you got them, put them in the comments below. And I explain why the media reacted so negatively to Gamergate in the context of these demographic shifts. And finally, I cover the end of YouTubers, because we're going too. And by going, I mean we're going to disappear. So see you then. Thanks.